Good evening. If you can see me, if you can see us, it can only mean one thing. It's Mental Health Monday. Welcome to another edition of Mental Health Monday, brought to you by Saving Grace Community Church and Grace House Cincinnati, a ministry of Saving Grace Community Church. I'm Pastor Trevor Phillips, along with our cohort, our road dog, Dr. Quentin Moss, founder and chief medical officer of Modern Psychiatry. Good evening, my friend.
Good evening. Glad to be here, man.
It's glad to be back. We've had a long hiatus, but the work was still going on. A lot of folks really enjoyed some of our classic editions, and it's good to have gone and been on air for a period of time now where we can actually say that we have some classic editions of Mental Health Monday covering a variety of subjects. Today gives us another exciting opportunity to deal with a topic that affects so many people in so many ways, not often always publicized, not always made people aware of how much it affects people around them and families around them. And that is the topic of suicide. And today's topic is simply a reason to live, a reason to live. Dr. Moss, when you think about suicide, it's one of those things, again, if someone has been stricken and fallen victim to cancer or some other type of illness, it's pretty readily put out there and pretty well known. But many people succumb, die via suicide, and you may not even know it. You just may know that a person has tragically died, and it may not be publicized because of just the whole stigma around it. But the truth of the matter is, it is something that is very prevalent, and worldwide, nearly 800,000 people die from suicide each year, and roughly one death out of every death every 40 seconds is related to suicide. So it's something that happens, but we're not always made aware of it. We're always made aware of it when a story is done on the news, but there's so many untold stories about persons who have succumbed to suicide. So, Dr. Moss, when we think about suicide, we, unfortunately, we have some terminology that's not always too that does not highlight the subject and does more bad than good, ending it all, offer oneself, and all those kind of things. And sometimes, again, in our society, I think in many circles, suicide is something that's a very sensitive topic, but in other circles, it's not something that is really given a lot of attention to. So when we think about suicide, what are some of the contributors or factors that go into one reaching a point where they feel, for whatever reason, they don't have a reason to live?
I wish that I could narrow it down to one or two things, but there aren't one or two things that lead to this manner of death. It's a lot of things. So what we do know is that when we are able to examine people who have death by suicide, almost half of them are people who have suffered some form of a mental health condition. So that raises a question. There's an area where we can put forth a great deal more attention, either medically, as a community, as people who are loving people who suffer from mental health conditions. There's more that we can do to help that population to be able to do better with their mental health. So perhaps we won't have people who die by suicide. But then there's that other 50% are people who don't have a diagnosed mental health condition. So these are people who may not have a mental health condition, or who may have a mental health condition and they've never sought care for that condition. And so there's a lot of work that the community can do in trying to bring folks to care, but also reducing the stigma that's associated with mental health care and with people who suffer with thoughts of suicide. So there's that aspect. When we go dig a little further, we find that 1 in 5 people who have completed suicide may have had some substance or alcohol in their system. So then we have to now raise awareness that if we are struggling and we're having difficulty with unhealthy thoughts, that use of substances can place us in a position of having greater danger. And so that information also needs to be shared with the community. But if we can, tackle this issue of stigma, helping people get to treatment and being able to be open about their struggles, letting the community know about the increased risk of suicide when we also use substances, and then accessing proper crisis resources, whether it's a phone line or loved ones or people in the community who actually have a great deal of experience in helping people in crisis. If we can tackle those things, then maybe we can make it some headway.
You mentioned that as a result of suicide, that it's directly attached to someone having some type of mental illnesses. Are there some mental illnesses in which one is more susceptible or more likely to have thoughts of suicide? And also, when you think about thoughts, if you could explain a little bit about just thoughts of suicides and some terminology or fixations or ideations, what that means.
Yeah. So again, from what we know from the data, clearly close to 50% of the people who complete suicide have had a mental health diagnosis, which means that there are many people who do this who are not diagnosed and who don't have a mental health condition. But when we think about those mental health conditions, we find that people who have a psychotic form of illness appear to be at the greatest risk of suicide. So people who suffer from schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. And then if we were to go a tier beyond that, then people who have bipolar disorder are at increased risk. And then surely people who suffer from depression are at great risk, but also people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety disorders. So, schizophrenia being the greatest risk, and then we kind of trickle down with the other conditions, which place people at greater risk. But one of the things that our community doesn't talk about enough is that people who suffer from substance use disorders, whether we're talking about alcohol, addicted to pain pills, any form of opioids, or including fentanyl, people who suffer from those conditions and others with substances are also at a greater risk of killing themselves. So there's a lot that we need to do in order to make sure that those people who do have those diagnosed conditions, that we let them know how they can get help when they're in the midst of a crisis. Now, you mentioned this question of terminology, and we have people, unfortunately, who suffer chronically, ongoing from having suicidal thoughts of not wanting to be here, or life will be better without them. And a number of people who suffer from that chronically, and we try to treat them. And we kind of describe that as ideations, right? Thoughts of, wanting to harm themselves. And then people may move forward from there, where we try to evaluate how much of an intent they have in actually harming themselves. How have they started to plan out ways in which they will end their life, or they're making any kind of final preparations in life. That gets us closer to people who have intent. And then other terminology is lethality. When people think about, how they will harm themselves, what is the risk that they will actually go through with completion with what the plan that they have. So those are some of the terminologies that we use, in the field. But to sum it all up, anyone who has thoughts or considerations of wanting to end their life or thinking that their life is not worth living, they warrant some form of attention so that we can give them some support and some treatment.
That's a good point, because we might just say, oh, well, they're having a hissy fit. Well, they're just case of the blues. But if you minimize it to that point, just on the off chance, the person you think is not capable of doing that, or in expressing themselves or how they feel that they don't have a reason to live, that it's a fact that they may be the very one that ends their life.
Well, there are some things that we look for as far as warning signs, Pastor.
Mhm.
People who start to isolate themselves. People start to mention that life would be better off without them, or thought they've actually overtly said that they want to kill themselves. People who have a significant change in their mood, whether their mood's becoming more depressed or more irritable or agitated. People who are starting to consume substances more, particularly alcohol. We want to make sure that we watch for that. And then people who start to make final preparations, start to give away things, start looking over wills. Those are some warning signs. Now, any of our challenges with life can put us in a place from not doing well, struggling to manage, to a place where we may have thoughts of suicide. That could be the onset of a severe illness, onset of a terminal illness, difficulty managing physical pain, being laid off or fired, divorce, death of a child. These are major life events that for some people creates a greater risk in being able to manage and cope, particularly if they're trying to do that by themselves, and places them at greater risk of self-harm and suicide.
Well, not to go down this road too far, but when you say that, it reminds me of the terminology murder suicide, in
Mhm.
which there is a caregiver, someone who's providing care for someone who's even terminally ill, and then either by agreement or not agreement, um, a life is the caregiver usually ends the life of the person taken care of and then takes their own. So that's another day, another subject totally, because then we talk about the whole thing about murder assisted suicide. But the challenge is and is to uh, when you were saying about the warning signs, let people know that there is a reason to live. And for those that are close to people who've had some of these life altering events, just to look out for these things,
Mhm.
and that if they start manifesting themselves, to be diligent and kind of know what to do in those situations.
When you bring up this topic of a reason to live, surely there's so much to live for. But I also want to mention that, we know more and more about how to help people now than even 10 years ago. We have the ability to provide supports for people. We have the ability to try to help them problem solve their life circumstance that leads them to think about suicide. The treatments that we have for mental health conditions, they get better every year in our ability to help people recover, whether it's problems with mood, anxiety, psychotic symptoms, or substance abuse. So there is a wealth of treatment that's available, and in our community, access is becoming better and better, and being able to walk in and get care. So
Mhm.
there is so much that we can do to be able to help people once we're able to identify them, to help them to get better, so that suicide is not looked at as the final option.
You know, again, suicide affects so many families, and there are so many stories that are untold about how suicide has affected one family or another family, because again, it's something that's not talked about. We are happy to have joining with us today to share her story, Ashley Dessler Rossler, all the way from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Ashley, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, Ashley, just tell us a little. You've heard what Dr. Moss and I have been talking about, and all the kind of overview in terms of that. But if you could just give a little personal touch in terms of how suicide has affected you and how real it is.
Okay. Um, I think you guys pointed. Well, I'll tell the story, and then I definitely want to comment on some of the things that Dr. Quentin Moss said, and as well as you, Pastor Phillips. So I'll set the stage for you guys. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, as well as my first husband. His name was Justin Hatfield. Um, I knew him since I was 13 years old, and we reconnected later on. I knew him all through school and everything. We were friends, and we had a lot of mutual friends, and we reconnected when I was in college and began dating, and then we got married. He was offered an amazing opportunity to come out to Santa Fe, New Mexico for an amazing job. So we got in the U-Haul and we drove out to Santa Fe, New Mexico from Cincinnati, Ohio. Justin and I, although we lived 1.5 miles apart from where our houses were, we grew up very differently. Justin had a lot of things happen in his life that created a lot of barriers. He had a lot of trauma. He had physical, sexual abuse within the family. He was actually estranged from his family the last 6 years of his life due to that. We just grew up really differently in that, you know, I had such a supportive family lifestyle and everything and support. And, you know, Justin kind of made like his family, like his friends and the people around him. And he was actually really close with my family. He definitely had depression. He definitely had anxiety, had PTSD. I didn't know like how severe it got till it got pretty severe, till things started coming up. We were talking about having a family. I was like in my 20s, and we were married for a couple of years, and I was like ready to have a family. And it's like it kind of like kickstarted all this stuff like from his past. It started bringing up things that happened that, I knew about some things that had happened in his life and some of his traumas, but not to the extent. And I was kind of blown away, like when he was sharing that with me. He started getting really, he said he was really starting to get sad. And he's like, I don't know, like having a family is like such a big, responsibility and everything, having a baby. And he told me, I think he's like, I just don't want to do what was done. Like, I don't want someone to have the same experiences that not that I would hurt anybody, but he was just so fixated on like, it's just such a big responsibility. And and we had a lot of deep talks about that. And then I started seeing signs of him just kind of, his mood was changing. He even looked at me one night and said, the only thing that's keeping me going right now is you. And I was like, my heart, I like physically can like go back and like just feel my heart sink, because for someone to say like, you're the only reason that I'm here and you're the only thing that's keeping me going, what a heavy burden thing to say to someone. And that's not good. I can't live for him. I was just that was like alarming to me. I was in the social work field for over a decade back then. I was actually a case manager at the time. So that was definitely a red flag. If one of my clients said that to me, I kind of went into, we need to figure this out. I'm like, you need to see a doctor. You need to talk to a therapist. Like we have a serious problem for you to say something like that. Like if you were sitting in my office and you were one of my clients and you said that to me, I would alarm everyone. So he really pushed against me with the therapy. I kept saying to him, like, there are some really serious things that happened in your life that you've never dealt with, and you're almost 30 years old. And this is something that I think a lot of people are afraid to talk to people, even though that like therapy is out there and people talk about it a little bit more. Like, I feel like my generation now talks about it a little bit more, and they're a little bit more open about it from like years like before. But I still think there's a stigma around that. Like almost like people are afraid to go talk about some of the things that they've been through in their past. Right. So he really pushed against me with that. But he did agree to go see a doctor. When he went, he, they put him on a lot of medication, and then he was actually diagnosed bipolar. They put him on like 4 different antidepressants. They put him on a sleeping med. At the time, I trust, I'm in my 20s. Like, I trusted like that was the best plan for him. And I just trusted that. And, Justin he was the breadwinner of our family. He had an amazing job. He supported, he contracted for the federal government and worked with the best engineers and people in the country. He was brilliant, smart, charismatic. He ran the house. Like he literally like did everything. Like, I didn't feel like I needed to tell him to take his medication because Justin had it all together from the outside, right? And even on the inside, like he was very structured. But I realized he definitely had like a meltdown when my parents were actually visiting. And like my parents got to see like him have like this like emotional like breakdown. And and they were very involved like when he was going through all this, and we were all really trying to support him. And then right before he had like went to the doctor and stuff. And his closest friends knew what was going on, that he was struggling for sure. But after he kind of got on the medication, he started like, he seemed upbeat there for a while. And then one night I came home from work and I went into the room and I came out and he was in the living room and he was doing cocaine. And I was like in pure shock. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, I was like blown away, because you have to understand, like he works somewhere where they randomly drug test. He works with the best of the best. He's doing stuff for our country. Like, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I just want to feel numb. That's what he told me. And he's like, I just want to feel numb. And I was like, this is not okay. Like, he's like, when we were younger and we were kids and like we would, party back in the day. And I'm like, we're not even in that part of our lives anymore. Like, we're both in careers. We haven't partied like this in a long time. Like, what? I was so taken back that he was doing that. Like, it was so out of character for him. So he said he would stop. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I basically gave him an ultimatum. Like, this is why we need to go talk to like a therapist. Like, you're trying to numb yourself away from feelings. And this is really bad. I was like, and you're on a lot of medication right now. This is not a good mix.
So Ashley, when you shared that with him, did you see, was his behavior progressively getting worse? Was he increasingly becoming more to himself, or did you see him more participating even more in destructive behavior?
I saw him.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I saw him definitely more to himself. I saw him definitely, and then this like weird destructive behavior like just like started, which was shocking to me, right? Because that wasn't him. You know what I mean? That was the part that really kind of blew my mind. But definitely started isolating himself more from people. Like we had recently moved from our one house, and like he really pushed to move out to this like one house like out in like the middle of nowhere, like a little bit away from town and stuff. I could definitely see, like when I look back now, I'm like, wow, like he really was kind of like isolating like a lot more than he was before.
How much time passed between him seeing initially the doctor and being on meds to the day where he ended his life? And share with us a little about that day.
6 months. So when that happened, so I saw on that, it was a Wednesday when I had seen when he was doing like cocaine. And then he died on the Saturday. But it was 6 months from the time that he was like put on medication and diagnosed and all that. I later found out, I'll jump a little bit ahead. I later found out, which we should talk about this, when I did an autopsy report on him, he had completely stopped taking every single one of his meds, and pretty sure it was cold turkey, which is disastrous. These medications that people are put on, I'm sure, Quentin, you can speak to this, like you are supposed to consult with a doctor. You are supposed to be weaned off of these medications. They have extreme side effects. So the autopsy doctor told me when I spoke with him that the combination of him just cold turkey stopping all these medications, and then no wonder he was trying to get numb, and he's like coming down so low that he was trying to he was taking cocaine days before. But they told me like he went into a complete psychosis with the amount of medication that he was on, and that he stopped at cold turkey, and then also with the mental illness, like that mixed in with the bipolar, he kind of was up against not a very good wall, right? And there was a lot of factors, coming into that. So when he had the night that he took his life, he had an episode like I had never seen before. He had slept those next few days from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He was very lethargic. He slept a lot. He promised me that he would go Monday morning. That he would go Monday morning and go speak with somebody. I was going to take him to a therapist that I knew within the field that I work in. So he actually said, okay. And I had been trying to get him to go to therapy for a really long time. So I finally felt like, okay, he's hit rock bottom in like his sadness. And now he's finally going to like take this next step and like actually talk to somebody. And, unfortunately he took his life that Saturday. The day of, he slept most of the day. He got up later afternoon. We went out to dinner. He was extremely loving. He was, our wedding anniversary was a few weeks away. He was making plans with me. And then he started, and out of nowhere, he kind of started talking about his papa, which was probably one of the only people, like family members in his life that he had like a decent relationship with, but he had passed years before. And he kind of started talking about him, and he started saying things like, I just miss him. I wish I could talk to him. I wish I could see him. That when he was saying it, I just took it as he was talking about a loved one. I didn't take it like, let's go see him or something like that. And we talked about Wednesday, and he's like, I don't know, like what has come over me. Like, you're right. I do need to talk to somebody. He was very like, I feel so bad. I'm sorry I'm upsetting you, very apologetic, very loving. And so we get in the car, and it was almost like a switch went off, and he was just like, I just want to feel numb. Like the whole way home, he's like, I just want to feel numb. I just want to feel numb. It's like he was trying to get away from like whatever he was feeling. Like, I want to feel numb. He just I can like hear it over and over in my head. And he kept saying it. And I was like, Justin, like, he's like, maybe we should just like escape like when we did when we were kids, and we should party and have fun and just be numb. And I'm like, Justin, like we've talked about this. Like we have like important careers. We're different people now. Like,
and so you're saying this is all happening on Saturday.
Yes.
And so Saturday evening, were you together? And was he by himself?
Saturday during the day, I got up, I left, I went and ran errands. I met up with a girlfriend. I had lunch. He was at home, and I literally came home and woke him up in the later afternoon. And I said, did you sleep all day? And he said, yeah. And he had slept all day long. So he was really, and then I got him up to like, we watched like a show, and then we went and ran an errand to the store, and then that's when we went to dinner. And then this conversation was like happening, and then we were driving home, and he was just very, like I said, like almost like a switch flipped. Like I couldn't, we had this like good conversation and dinner and everything, and then it led into talking about a past loved one, and then it led into this total, I want to feel numb. He goes home. He's and a friend called in between there, and she said that she was going to come over. And we said, that's fine, like come on over. So like he knew like one of our good friends was going to come by. And we get to the house. He's like, I'm gonna leave for a little bit. Like, I just want to go feel numb. And I was like, do not leave. Like, I said, this is what I'm talking about. I was like, what is like going on? Like that
So you were back. So you were back at the house, and then he found a point where he wanted to leave from you to be alone.
He wanted to leave, and I was like, do not like leave. I was like, this is why we need to go talk to somebody, like for you to feel this intense. He's like, no, I'm going to go. And he walked out the door, and he got in the car.
So we've temporarily lost Ashley.
Yeah,
so Doc, here we go.
Oh,
go ahead. We lost
okay.
For a minute.
Oh, you lost me. Okay. Okay, so he was pretty like upset that I was like telling him like, no, you shouldn't go. He's like, don't tell me what to do. I was just like, so he went out the door. He was mad, right? And he got the car stuck in the sand. We like in New Mexico, like if you get the car stuck in the sand, sometimes you can't get them out, right? Or they spin out. He got himself. He probably like spinning out he had this little sports car. He's like, it was spinning out in the sand. He comes back inside like in a rage, like because he couldn't leave, like because the car was stuck in the sand. And he messed with it for a while, and he just started like destroying everything in the house that like I couldn't even believe it. Like this is one of the most loving, docile, like sweetest human beings. And it was almost like every ounce of pain he had in him, he was just like trying to get it out. And he was doing things that I was just blown away with. Like he was just like destroying things. He told me straight up, I'm going to kill myself. He said, I'm going to take you with me. He started, the dog started jumping up on him, which the dog was his world. Anyone who knew him, like that was his baby. And he even like hit the dog. He put his hands on me, which I never in a million years, like just, I wish I could tell you all that I had like a toxic relationship. It probably would have made this way easier for me. I wish I could have told you, I wish I could tell you all, we had issues within our marriage. It would have made this probably easier for me. He never had hurt me. He was the most loving individual to me. For him to put his hands on me was just like out of this world. I couldn't believe it. I think at one point he even said, like, I think he was shocked he did it. He went to go get his gun, and I literally knocked it out of his hands like 5 different times. I was like, don't do it. Don't do it. I was trying to be really calm in like the training that I've had, like with my work. I was like, it's Ash, it's Ash, it's Ash. It's almost like he couldn't even hear me or see me. And the only reason he got the gun, like back, cause I knocked out his hands like 5 times, was he put it in my face. And then I literally thought I was going to die. And he put it in my face, and then I see the look in his face, like almost like he couldn't believe he put it in my face. And then he pulled it back immediately, and then he shot himself right in front of me. And I just remember like seeing the look on him, like almost like instantly. And in a lot of these like stories with survivors of suicide, they're usually we're not usually there, but I was there. And I try to say this to people who've lost loved ones. Like, the second that he did it, it's like I almost saw the look on his face, like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, almost like this. And it was probably a millisecond because he died pretty instantly because he shot himself in the head. But it was almost like he couldn't believe that he did it himself. Like, it's like I saw that. And I try to say that to people, that I think that people get in such low spaces and get so down that they make a permanent mistake. You know what I mean? It's not a mistake that you can come back from. If you make bad mistakes and you use drugs, you can come back from that. You can recover from that. If you steal from somebody, or you make bad choices within your marriage, or you make bad choices within your family or whatever, you can do certain things to come back from that. When you take your life, it's a permanent mistake that you can never come back from. And go ahead.
Well, Ashley, I was going to ask you, that is to witness that, and we obviously see how traumatic event it was for you.
Mm-hmm.
At any time, did you feel any guilt for that? Because it sounds like, you did what you were trained to do. You tried to de-escalate the problem and point out to him that he could come back from all the stuff he had gone through. Did you experience any guilt or somehow feel culpable in his killing himself? Dr. Moss.
On here. Okay, there we go. I felt extremely guilty. I felt like the biggest failure on the planet. I felt like I could have, and I'm pretty sure this is how a lot of survivors feel, because I've spoken to a lot of them. You feel like you could have saved them, and what did you do? That was like, what did you not say, or what did you not do, or what did you not show them? For the longest time, I felt like it was totally my fault. I felt like I let everyone down. I felt like, because I was physically there and I couldn't stop him, and I tried like hell to stop him, that I felt like what a let down to everyone who loved him. But I've had almost 10 years of dealing with this situation, and I've done a lot of reflection, and I had to really sit back, and we are our own beings, and no matter how much love you give someone, no matter how great of a relationship you have with this person who's taken their life, no matter how many amazing, magical, awesome moments you have, they have what they feel inside, and what they go through inside is something that I can't touch, no matter how deep of a connection I had with him. A lot of people, were extremely shocked when Justin died, because, from the outside looking in, we were a young couple in our 20s. We had a beautiful home. We lived in one of the most beautiful places in the United States of America. We had a lot of friends. Materialistic wise, we had a lot of things. I didn't really worry about, money and things like that. I didn't have like those worries. We didn't have those burdens. We were blessed, like, in a lot of ways. So from the outside looking in, you kind of look at this young couple. We didn't have kids yet. It was just us. We did what we wanted to do. We traveled. We did our thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the outside looking in, you think, oh wow, like that guy has it all. Like he does. But inside, he is shredded, and like I said to you guys before, like, I wish I could tell people, and, everyone who knows us would tell you this, like, that was like one of the best relationships I had ever been in up to that point. That he was my person. We were deeply connected. We were best friends. we left our city of comfort together. We experienced all these things together. Like, I have a lot of amazing memories with him, you know.
And those,
So
and with those memories,
Mhm.
you also, you found a reason yourself to live after that,
Yeah,
and
it was
and
difficult for
which was critical for you.
sure.
So how did your faith aid you in bringing you through?
You know, I will be very honest with you. Up until that point, my my faith was definitely not as strong as what it is now. Um, I went through it. I even thought for the first few years, like, I was suicidal. I was very much um, severely depressed. I had extreme PTSD, anxiety. I didn't sleep for a long, long, long time, guys. um, I had a lot of difficulty in the beginning, and I definitely, I will say, I was really rallied around. I had amazing people in my life, especially being in the social work field at that time. You know, I had a lot of great colleagues that were unbelievable with me. But you know, I had to kind of go on this journey myself and just feel through my pain. Um, I shared a lot of that time. I wrote a lot. I just tried to have as many outlets as I could. I was very open about my sadness. There were moments when I definitely got close to the edge where I literally like begged God, like, just take me. Like, I don't think that I can do this or go on. But I just really dug deep, and my thing was, I have a really deep connection with my family, and I couldn't imagine putting them through that, because I feel like his pain transferred to me, right? Like
Mm.
everything that it went to me, and I just wanted to break the cycle. And I remember someone said that to me, like, break the cycle, break the cycle, break the cycle, no matter what you can do. Because if you do that, this cycle continues on, right? So um, I I just took it day by day, and I was just very. I've always been a really open person, guys. Like, my personality is different from Justin's. I've always been pretty outgoing kid. My feelings are right there on my shoulders or on my face. You can see it immediately how I feel. I've always been pretty open about being vulnerable and stuff. So when I went through this, I actually got to. I I expressed it. I expressed it a lot, which was probably the best thing I did, because I got it out of me, you know.
Mhm.
I learned different coping skills to use when I needed to cry and break down. I did that, you know. I was very open with that process with people. I didn't hide that from anybody.
Mhm.
Um, there were moments of I did get really close to the edge, but I had some people in my life that really stepped in and
So with your
helped me, you
circle,
know. And
you had a strong circle of friends and family that kind of
oh
motivated
yeah.
you and inspired you to keep going and
Hmm.
keep going and keep going. Dr. Moss, hearing some of what Ashley has said in terms of you and as a professional, what are some things that in terms of inspire you, are some things that as you look at how she dealt with the situation could help other people?
I think that what she struggled with is common, particularly if we are witnessing the person, ending their life. So, very traumatic event, and all the symptoms that you talked about in regards to guilt, difficulties with mood, anxiety, and sleep. Unfortunately, that's a very serious consequence. So, what is great? Having a support system, a family that rallied around her, as she talked about, being in situations where she could freely discuss and kind of breathe out this pain that she had been experiencing. And I'm hoping also, being involved with mental health professionals to be able to help her to make those steps forward.
Yeah.
So that is those are our three key things. But she also mentioned something that that I think is worthwhile talking about, and that when someone suffers from a severe exacerbation or worsening of their mental health, and as she mentioned that he felt, really tormented by, what he was experiencing. We as the people who love them, who support them, and even the folks who treat them, we don't own that part, right? That is a part, unfortunately, that I can't own. I can treat it, I can love it, I can support it, but ultimately that decision is theirs. My goal is to try to put them in the best position that they can make some better decisions with what they're struggling with. You know,
Hmm.
so that's something that I hope that everyone hears, not to take on the guilt because of the final decision that someone has made, but we just want to put ourselves in the best position to help them to influence that position to do a little bit better.
Well,
You know,
I want to tell you, there's just an incredible story, and I want to thank you for just being transparent, just your realness and what you have said. Dr. Moss, I want to point out something else that Ashley shared, and I just want you to spend briefly on it. How important is it for those that have been prescribed psychotropic medicines to stay on them and to take them, and um, and to share with their physician what they're experiencing as a result of taking them?
The medications that we prescribe are very effective in trying to treat symptoms, and just listening to what Ashley's mentioned in trying to stabilize mood and also to help with trauma experiences. So again, very helpful. But when we stop these medications, these medications are targeting areas in the brain so the brain can function better, more efficiently, being able to have a sense of control in our mood and our behaviors. But when we stop them, that abrupt discontinuation can cause severe mood problems, problems with anxiety, to the point that by abruptly stopping them, people can put themselves in a very compromised situation. If you feel like the medications aren't working, or you have problems with side effects of the medications, or you've just decided that, hey, I want to do my treatment without medication for some time, that is most definitely a worthwhile discussion to have with your provider. But have that discussion with the provider and not just abruptly stop the medications.
Well, actually, your story is one that is not um, um, uncommon to many. You've just been able to have the courage today to share that. But we do understand that suicide, there is a broader, it affects community at large. Um, and it's more prevalent than I think that many communities would like to acknowledge. Joining us now is Kristen Smith, who's a part of Envision Partnerships. To reach her, you can envisionpartnerships.org. And Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing your story. That was difficult. I had to take some deep breaths myself.
Mhm.
Share with us a little bit about how important it is for a community to educate the community, to put out education in the community about suicide, and what communities can do in terms of tackling this subject and to prevent less suicides by death by suicide.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of my work for Envision Partnership, the majority of it, is to chair the Butler County Suicide Prevention Coalition, and part of a network of coalition chairs across the state. So there's one in Hamilton County and other counties surrounding us. And we look at this at a community level. And I had some things I wanted to talk about, but I think after hearing Ashley's story, I think the most important initiative that we are doing is we're forming something called a LOS-DOS team. And LOS stands for Local Outreach for Suicide Survivors. DOS is Drug Overdose Support, Survivor Support, sorry. And we want this team to be trained by, it was developed, I've forgotten the name of the man that developed this, but it's been practiced a lot in Franklin County. And the person who really got it up off the ground has been working with our team and will be training us next month. We have a township in Fairfield Township here in Butler County that is going to sort of be the pilot for this. And the model is that at a time of a suicide or a drug overdose, there's 2 people and their volunteers sent out at that time, and at least one has experienced suicide. Certainly it would have to be down the line or a drug overdose, right? Whichever one matches, when they've had some time to heal, and they feel strong enough and able to do this. And they are there to be with the impacted person, that family member that's present, while the first responders, the investigators, do the work that they have to do that can be very difficult. But even more important than that on the scene work is the follow-up, being able to, Ashley, you have a background in social work. And in hearing your story, I was like, I was so thankful that you knew so much about what you needed. And of course, your family was supportive. And not everybody has that. And
No.
Yeah.
They don't have that. I just want to say, and just hearing you say for someone to be there who's been through it, even though I did have all that support, it was really hard to relate to people in a sense of, you kind of feel in this crazy bubble, no one understands me. I just lost somebody this way really tragically. And especially because I was actually present for the suicide. Mm-hmm. I felt very oh my gosh, there was no support there. So to have I just wanted to say that is, to me, to have somebody there who knows what that feels like, that's indescribable, of the support that somebody needs. And so that is just I just want to say I want to let you keep talking, but I just want to say that just my heart in that sense that is what people need. And I think a lot of people feel alone, people who are survivors of suicide, because it is such a heavy thing. And I remember, I just want to say this to you guys real fast. I remember looking on these support groups online, because I did some support groups and stuff, but I would read things at night because I couldn't sleep. And there would be people on there, and they would be the way they were describing their pain and everything. They would say, it's been 15 years, it's been 20 years. And I felt it literally, the way they described it is basically the day of. I was really, really blown away by it. So I'll let you keep going, Kristen, but I just never wanted to feel that pain.
Yeah.
I didn't want to feel that pain 25 years later. The way that people were describing it was what I was going through. So.
There's someone in my office who experienced suicide of a husband, and she had that same feeling in speaking in, let's say, it was a support group, and it seemed some people were stuck, and for her, she felt that she didn't have hope, because is this always going to be like this? So I think what this illustrates is there's many different ways to go about this, and she found somebody to help her get through that. So that worked better for her. And so what a LOS-DOS team is, it has an array of resources and help. And it's just follow up with that person and connecting them to the resource that's going to be helpful, not just handing them a pamphlet and say, here, go to this grief support group, but find out what is it that's going to be helpful to them and stay with them and know they're cared for and know that people are still thinking of them, because postvention is what we're talking about here, is suicide prevention. People who've survived a family member dying by suicide, by doing postvention work, we can prevent what Ashley mentioned, is that cycle of it happening again. And so that's why we are really putting a lot of time and effort into getting this team off the ground. It's not yet off the ground, but we have been working on it for months and months. And the coroner is on this team and asking lots of great questions. And we have harm reduction people from the health department, and and of course, a lot of people who have survived death by suicide or drug overdose. And we need more. We will need a large team, because not everybody will be available or ready to go out at any given time. And we will have to take care of these volunteers, because it's self-care is going to be really important for this effort.
So as we hurry to a close, Kristen, I'm just wondering, for those that would be living in various communities where these type of awareness efforts are not have not been born, or not been presented to the community, what are some ways that initially they can start such a group?
For specifically, you mean a coalition or the specific
Coalition.
The coalition. Okay. Well, there is, if someone is in Hamilton County, is it like your church is in Hamilton County? Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There is a Hamilton County coalition, and I just received an email this week from someone from the ADMIS board. I think that's how you say it when you say all of the little letters put together. But they are trying to breathe new life into it. They've called me. They want to talk about what we've been doing. So I think reaching out to the Hamilton County addiction and, oh gosh, what does all those letters stand for? But the Addiction Services and Mental Health Board for the county will connect them to a coalition in Hamilton County. And then in Butler County, you can reach out to me at Envision Partnerships. It's just Kay Smith at Envision Partnerships. I can even redirect people for sure. However, I want to mention one last thing. I know we're really running out of time here, but if people are like, I'm not sure of the warning signs of suicide, and I also don't know what to do if I saw them. So it's a myth in our culture that you could, about asking about suicide. You can absolutely ask someone if they are thinking about suicide. It has been shown. See, Dr. Moss, he's shaking his head. This is evidence-based. There's science behind it. And if you ask someone, are you thinking of suicide? And they say yes, that is the very question that's going to prevent suicide. It's a question, folks, and we're not asking the question, and it's because of stigma. So we offer a training called QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer. And that last step is critical, referring to mental health resources like Dr. Moss, for example, and other therapists and people who have the knowledge to move this person in a new direction. So we offer these monthly. I will be teaching one actually on the 15th. So if you have a lunch break, noon to 1:30, it's virtual. It doesn't matter where you live. Get on envisionpartnerships.org and you can register. It's a free training.
Thank you so much, because we do have viewers from, believe it or not, all over the country. And so I ask those questions because someone in their community may not be aware of a coalition that may have been established, or they may want to, at a grassroots level, be the one who brings that coalition.
That would be so good.
So we will definitely invite them to check you out at envisionpartnerships.org. Envision, no S, partnerships.org.